morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. So glad that you are here. Now, we just saw the government grew to a record size this year. We just saw a record deficit reported of $3.1 trillion. That's bigger than the size of government quite often. And the big question is what to do about it. Rick Manning is president of Americans for Limited Government. He's joining us to talk about this. Rick,
thanks for having me, Carrie.
So, Rick, there's a lot of talk right now about stimulus. The White House, specifically the Treasury Secretary, we just had a spokeswoman on last week about this. They're really pushing to get some type of additional coronavirus stimulus spending. Nancy Pelosi wants even more. And so the disagreement here is about the size of the package. Senate Republicans are less warm to the whole idea in general. What's your read on all this?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. The economy was going great, and then the coronavirus hit, the Chinese virus hit, and essentially the decision was made for the government to stop the economy. And it created a massive amount of unemployment. It created a lot of businesses that weren't able to even exist anymore. And so there was a rationale for going in and trying to help out on a temporary basis. What the Senate's trying to do, and I support the Senate proposal if we have to have something, because it's $500 billion, which is a lot of money. Let me be clear, that's a lot of money. But it really focuses on those people who are being left behind because their state governments won't open up. States like Michigan, states like New York, states like California. And their small businesses are being destroyed, and they've got the highest unemployment rates. So consequently, Congress, the Senate, the Republican Senate is actually trying to help the blue state businesses and the blue state workers at a time when Nancy Pelosi's essentially trying to bail out the blue state governors and public employee unions. That's the real fight. That's what the big difference in money is. And quite honestly, we ought to be taking a hard look next fiscal year, in terms of cutting everything back by 10% and not having any supplemental stimulus, and just really rolling back government by about 10% to be able to give us a chance to catch our breaths.
Well, Rick, and I heard what you said about a price tag for Senate Republicans around $500 billion. That's way lower than what we're hearing from Nancy Pelosi. Do you think Mitch McConnell would block a bill if it gets somewhere more in the neighborhood of $2 or $2.5 trillion?
Well, Nancy Pelosi was putting $3 trillion, $3+ trillion on the table. That's what passed the House. Then she went down to $2.2 trillion, but said, "Oh, we're going to pass the rest of it later. We're just moving the timeline back." So she still has a $3 trillion plus plan with a lot of other things in it that have nothing to do with the COVID virus. So, I think Mitch McConnell's made it clear that he's got an offer on the table. That's what they're going to do. They're going to do it this week. The Senate Democrats may not let it come to the floor because of the filibuster, but the Republicans are going to make it clear that they're willing to put money into COVID research. They're willing to put money into masks. They're willing to put money into testing. They're willing to put money to help extend unemployment help. They're willing to do a lot of things with that $500 billion. I want to put that into perspective for you, Carrie. We will bring in probably around $3.1 trillion this year, in this last fiscal year. And you know what? When you think about the money that they're talking about spending, that's 1/6 of our entire revenues in a year. That's what we're talking about. That's an incredible amount of money. And yet Nancy Pelosi wants to spend more than we actually bring in a year in the fourth or fifth stimulus package.
Right. So they're calling it the skinny bundle. So a smaller package that's more narrowly and targeted. But do you think this will actually pass? Pelosi says she has a deadline of tomorrow, Tuesday. Mnuchin is actually overseas. He's in the Middle East. Do you think we're going to get a deal?
I think Mitch McConnell is going to try to pass something in the Senate, and the Democrats will decide whether they want it or not. The fact of the matter is, at some point, this becomes political gamesmanship. Nancy Pelosi decides she'd rather have nothing than to not have her other priorities funded, and as a result, they're at loggerheads. And quite honestly, I don't believe that the Republicans should move and spend even more money. The package they have does exactly what needs to be done, and as it is, we're going to have to dig out from this coronavirus for a generation to make up the money that we spent on this thing. So you get right down to it, $3 trillion is a lot, and borrowing that from the Chinese is dangerous.
Rick, I want to turn to another topic here while we still have you, and this is the question of Section 230. We had the big news with the New York Post reporting about the laptop and the allegations that Vice President Pence, or excuse me, Vice President Biden met with someone from Burisma, and you have the Biden campaign now saying that that meeting might have happened, and if it did, it would have been a cursory meeting, though. So this news coming out was suppressed very overtly and directly by Twitter and Facebook. So you had the president saying, well, these special privileges that I'm giving to you tech companies under Section 230 that says you're a neutral, agnostic platform that's not making editorial decisions, we're going to strip away that privilege because you are engaging in editorial decisions. A lot of conservatives have said this is a good thing. We need to repeal Section 230 and have more regulation for these tech companies. So what's your take as someone who advocates for limited government? Should Section 230, these basically hands-off approach to the tech companies continue, or do you support more government here?
Well, I support the law, and the law says you have to be neutral and unedited to be able to have Section 230. Let me tell you what Section 230 actually does. It actually allows Twitter or Facebook or Google or anybody to have other people's copyrighted material on their pages without them having to pay for it. That's what Section 230 actually does. And so what Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Amazon, for that matter, are getting as an advantage here is they're getting the ability to use other people's content for free as part of the content they provide their users. It made sense as long as they weren't editing that content, as long as they weren't censoring that content. But now that they've gotten into the political advocacy game and they're censoring stuff, they're determining what you should see, they're determining what you can't see, they've lost the underlying, under the law, they no longer are eligible for Section 230. So this isn't a matter of regulating them, this is a matter of following the law, and they've made a decision to no longer be Section 230 compliant, and hence they should not be covered by Section 230, and they should start paying for people's copyrighted materials. And I'll tell you what, that's something they really can't afford to do.
Well, as a media company who broadcasts on these social media networks, that's kind of music to my ears, as I always like to point out to guests. There is just really a damning graph of newspaper revenues going like this and Google revenues going like this, crossing and Google surpassing news organizations. And it's the same with Facebook and Twitter, where if you go to any of these tech companies' lunches, they give free lunches. So they're literally eating the media companies' lunches. So real quick, what do you think would happen in a Biden-Harris administration on this?
Oh, Biden-Harris administration will roll over on their backs with a paws in the air for Silicon Valley, and they'll do the same thing for China. The fact of the matter is, Biden-Harris is looking backwards. They're trying to relive a time when we still were naive enough to believe that people wouldn't manipulate things for political interests, or that countries like China wouldn't try to take advantage of the extraordinary trade deals we gave them. And so what you're looking at with Biden-Harris is essentially a rollback to what they consider the big good old days, when we're outsourcing our jobs and we were dependent upon 3 networks who decided what was fit to print over 22 minutes of every evening.
All right, Rick, we got to leave it right there. Thank you. Now, is artificial intelligence taking over? Stay tuned. We will let you know.